Okay, it being 6:30, I'm going to call to order a meeting of the Oregon School District Board of Education. It is Monday, August 22nd, 2022, and we are in the OSD Innovation Center at Oregon High School. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Bijak?
Here.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Here.
Mr. LeBrun?
Here.
Mr. Pankratz?
Present.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Ms. Flanagan?
Present. Board does have a quorum, and because Dr. Lakuta is on the phone, we're going to do everything by roll call vote this evening. So we do have a full, before I do that, we do have proof of notice that this meeting has been properly noticed, thanks to Ms. Heitz, so we're good there. On our agenda tonight, we have a normal consent calendar. We do have information items, which include public comment and Oea Report, and then our action items, which are the important ones tonight, for the resolutions authorizing a referendum if you so choose, and then we'll have approval of the 2022 annual meeting agenda. So I will entertain a motion to approve that agenda.
So, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. On to the consent calendar. We do have minutes of the previous meetings that board members had approved or can look at to approve. We do have updated staff resignations and hires in front of you on your yellow sheet. And then we do have one donation tonight from Rich Hackner, 2009 Toyota RAV4 for the shop class. So thank you very much, Mr. Hackner, for that donation for that class. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Leslie with the motion, Mary with the second. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Ms. Garrison? Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. On to B, information items, public comment. We do have someone registered, so I will go ahead and read the policy prior. District Policy 180.05 provides an opportunity for the public to address the board. We value the public comment period and feedback from our stakeholders. To comply with the open meetings law and to ensure consistency, public comment will have the following parameters. Speakers will have 3 minutes in which to make their comments, and Ms. Heitz will signal the speaker when their time is up. The board will not comment after each speaker and will reserve discussion to any items on the agenda, and speakers are welcome to stay for the meeting. And then next steps following public comment may include referral to the appropriate administrator for follow-up with the speaker or placement of the matter on a future board agenda. All right, Mr. Dan Donahue, if you would come up to the microphone and state your address so we know that you live within the district, and then 3 minutes are yours.
All right, I'm Dan Donahue. I'm at 315 Landover Drive in Oregon. So I doubt I'm about to say anything that anyone doesn't know, and that there's an action item. Best kind of public comment, right? But in thinking about the referendum and looking at the referendum that's being voted on tonight, I was looking back through the history of the last 7 years, the number of referendums we've passed, the amount of money we've passed for them, and that continued trend. And we all know that's because of state law. That's because of limitations that have been put on us for a variety of different reasons. My concern is that it seems like we are somewhat acting reactively in terms of our referendums rather than proactively. And what I mean by that is, while there are limitations on what we can do, there are other options. And I'm thinking creative options, so I get way out there. Let's open an ice cream shop. But I was doing the math on my property taxes, and it comes out to about like $400 some odd a year that my taxes have gone up in 7 years just for the school district, on top of a new library, a new senior center, a new village hall, all these different things. And it's starting to have a significant impact on taxes. And not that it's just starting to, it has, and it continues to. So I know we're all in a tight spot with that. I know we all don't know what to do about that other than to ask for the money we need to keep the school district the way we want it to be and at the quality level we want it to be. And I have 4 kids in it, so I don't take this as me being against the referendum. I'm not. But I am against, or I am for managing our money in a way, which is not to suggest we're not, Andy. But thinking ahead in a way that if we go, in 5 years, we know we're going to have another operational shortfall absent the state doing something extreme. What can we start to plan for with that now? Whether it's investments, whether it's whatever it may be. It's just like a referendum every 2.5 years, roughly, seems frequent. And I don't know, I saw the statistics on the other districts, and I don't know how many referendum they have done compared to the one they're doing now. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on that general issue. It's such a big issue, it's hard to summarize, but if there are ways that we can find to find funding in another way. Everyone's looking for it, no one's found the magic key. And ways that we can not have it be quite so. This one felt rushed to me. I don't know why. It felt like the community groups came together quickly, things were developed quickly, and compared to the others. So more notice and just trying to be a little bit more proactive with them would be wonderful. That is my least eloquent speaking ever, but and I know you can't ask me anything, so.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue. Is there anyone else here for public comment? Is there anyone else here for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to 2, OEA report, and I believe Mr. Nate Johnson is here to speak on behalf of OEA. Nate, the floor is yours.
So those out there in the public who don't know me, I'm Nathan Johnson. I am a science teacher at the high school and a member of the OEA Board of Directors. And I'm here tonight to present a statement from our Oregon Education Association. The Oregon Education Association Board of Directors, as the duly elected representatives of the teachers of the Oregon School District, remains committed to supporting the district administration and school board as they consider moving forward with an operational referendum this November. The state legislature's 2-year freeze on school funding in the current state biennial budget, despite the availability of existing state revenues, is a brazen attack on public schools in Wisconsin. The state continues to fall further behind in its statutory responsibility to properly fund public schools. At the same time, on a state and national level, we face an unprecedented shortfall in the number of people willing to choose and stay in education as a profession. While there are many factors contributing to this crisis, public education's continued inability to compensate educators comparably to other professions with similar educational attainment is one large contributing factor. Finally, current extraordinary inflationary pressures mean that continuing a freeze in teacher compensation would equate to a pay cut for educators. As the OEA, the district, and the community all strive to continue to provide a high-quality educational experience for our learners, recruiting and retaining high-quality educators in every classroom is paramount. Like so many other districts throughout the state, Oregon has recognized that the only way to address the state's abrogation of their duty to properly fund public schools is through a local operational referendum. We want to remain a destination district that attracts the highest quality educators, as we know that is the backbone to providing the highest quality learning experience for students. The OEA urges the community to support an operational referendum to provide the necessary funding to continue to provide quality educational experiences for all our learners. We stand for the power of public education to strengthen our community's future. Please stand with us.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. We do not have student leaders yet. I think they will be going once we get back in school, so we'll look forward to that this fall. And so we'll move on to C, action items. I think we're going to begin with a presentation. And Troy, I know you have a statement you want to make.
As I always do on this agenda topic, I'm going to recuse myself. My wife, Kelly, is currently on leave as an employee with the district, and in the event that she comes back to work here for the district, my vote on this topic or discussion on this topic could impact my future household income. So I will step away from the table while you discuss this topic.
Great. So the way we're going to handle it tonight, because Dr. Lakuta is on the phone, we'll have the presentation, then we'll have the opportunity for asking clarifying questions. We'll go around, and then once we are done with our clarifying questions, because I know we've been ruminating about this for a long time as a board, and then we'll move to if someone wants to put the first motion on the floor. Okay? Dr. Bergstrom, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And while I have definitely given a presentation about how we got to where we are this evening many times and in many venues, I'll take an opportunity to go over it again, because there may be people out there who haven't heard it before and are still gaining the foundational information that's really important in the decision facing the board this evening. So in all of our community sessions, we have started with what we believe to be as our shared goal. And I think that was definitely articulated in the OEA statement tonight, and that is, we want the best educator in every classroom. And I mean that extraordinarily broadly, because I'm talking about all of the adults in the school building who have a positive impact on the learning experiences of our students. We want great counselors, great social workers, great paraprofessionals. We want the people who greet our students in the office every day to be the very best people we can have. And we know that that matters. As a matter of fact, research will tell us that the teacher in the classroom is what has the greatest impact on our students' success. So knowing that, we have some challenges, and that they have been articulated in several venues, but they remain the same, and that is the lack of state funding and how that impacts our ability to retain and attract educators. So we know that we have seen a significant drop in our ranking of funding per pupil from the state, from number 11 out of 50 in 2002 to 25 out of 50 in 2020. And that does not include the last 2 years of 0% increases. That's actually the largest drop in national ranking of any state during this time period. So how does that impact us? Well, you can see that 90% of our operational budget is actually determined by the state. We don't have much control over the other 10% either, but 90% of it is determined by the state. Of our entire operating budget, 80% of it is spent on staffing and benefits, which makes sense because we know it's the people that make a difference for our students. And we also know that for 2 years in a row, we've received no additional state funds per student. So you can see that in the past, when you look at this graph, you can see that the change in CPI from the previous year and the change in funding from the state, the per pupil change, they followed one another fairly closely until 21-22. And then you see we have a 2-year very big gap. A $2.9 million gap in 21-22. And depending on the rate of inflation for 22-23, the gap could be anywhere from $3.6 to $4.8 million. So as the OEA said, if we want to remain a destination district, in every sense of the word, meaning people want to work here and families want to move here for the schools, if we want to remain the destination district that we are, then we also have to maintain our high staff retention rates. We do an excellent job of keeping our staff here with us, and we want it to stay that way. We have to offer compensation that keeps up with inflation and is competitive when we look at what our neighboring districts are also paying their staff. When you look at the chart below, you see that for 2 school years in a row, with the current state of finances, the teachers will have a $0 increase to their base pay, despite the fact that CPI, or CPIU, as determined for bargaining purposes, was 1.23 last year and 4.7 now. So that really makes us feel as if our staff is 5.93% behind where we would like them to be in such an inflationary time. And we see that we can't even predict 23, 24. So what is the bottom line? We all want to maintain the high quality services that we have, the education that our students currently get. We want to maintain that level of quality. And we want to keep and attract excellent educators in a market that is increasingly competitive. It is about how many people are entering the profession and how many people are choosing to leave it. We simply have fewer applicants even though we are a destination district. We have to be able to offer competitive salaries to allow the terrific people who currently serve our students to continue serving our students. And we've done a lot to make this, to try to make up for the gap that we're experiencing in our funding. We're continually reviewing the budget, analyzing expenses. We made a change to health insurance that, I know wasn't a popular change with the staff because some people were impacted significantly, but it was a fiscally responsible change. We had to lower the costs. We saved $600,000 over 3 years in lowering the costs. That was the right thing to do. It was also the right thing to do to use the federal funding or the ESSER funds for what they were intended for, which is COVID-related expenses. And that means not only the technology that we needed during that time period, but also additional mental health support positions and academic support positions that were 1-year temporary positions because this is one-time funding, but they're important and they're necessary. And we've also done some work with restructuring debt so that in total, we can say that we've reduced expenses by $2 million. I want to talk about ESSER again one more time because I know that many other districts are choosing to prolong the fiscal cliff for 1 more year by using ESSER funding, and I understand why they would do that, but that wasn't the intention for the money. The intention for the money from the federal government was to make sure our students had what they needed related to the impact of the pandemic. So what did we use the money for? Outdoor classrooms, instrument covers, technology, as we mentioned before, hiring contact tracers so that we could open and ensure that we were maintaining the health and safety of our students. The 1-year mental health support positions were a part of ESSER. The short-term academic engagement specialists and support teachers, that was a part of ESSER. We had online curriculum subscriptions, and we did foundational literacy training for our teachers because it was important, or it was required, I should say, the 20% of the ESSER funding be allocated to evidence-based practices. And that was one example of that. So we were very thoughtful, very strategic, and we did have a community night to make sure that people understood our intentions, and we gave an opportunity for feedback on those intentions because this was important to spend this money in a way that benefited our students. So what are the other districts who are experiencing this budget shortfall? What are they doing? Well, as I mentioned, they may be using ESSER funds to pay operational expenses, which I understand, but I also understand that that means after you use the one-time money, the next time you have to pay your bills, that money's not there. And we didn't think that that was something that was responsible in our particular scenario. Some people are reducing services, and that means, of course, reducing staff, which of course means increasing class sizes. Some went to referendum for operations last April, and some are going in November. As a matter of fact, some of our closest neighbors are going in November. So you can see those districts listed here. In one of our neighboring districts, Wanakee, they're still discussing. It was really critical to understand what our community was thinking, what was important to them, and to increase the knowledge base within our community related to school funding, because that's not something that the average person knows a lot about. But it does have a significant impact on our district and our ability to keep the great things we have. And so we wanted to go out and spread the word and give people some information. And what we found from the participants who joined us is that they have very similar priorities to the priorities of the board, which is continuing to attract and retain the very best educators, keeping class sizes similar to what they are today, to continue to fund the mental health positions that were a part of the ESSER funding, and to make sure that our staff salaries are adjusted to keep up with inflation. They also believe that this was a problem that needed to be addressed now, and that we should be competitive with our neighboring districts. And those are the priorities that we discussed with the people who were able to attend those sessions, and they are the priorities that the board has been discussing for the last several meetings. So, knowing that those were our priorities and understanding the budget situation that we are in, we put together 3 different options for the board to consider, We received their feedback on the options, and we're coming back to the board with a recommendation tonight. So you can see the options that we proposed on August 8th. So what we wanted to tell you tonight, August 22nd, was that after listening to the feedback, after looking at all of the feedback that came from our focus group participants, we are recommending to you that we go with option 2, which is the middle of the road option, the 11.4 million, which includes everything you see in option 1, plus the ability to make some market adjustments for educators and staff. Now, when we talk about what is the impact of the 11.4 million and how that would roll out over the course of 3 years, I'm going to take my next slide and pass it over to my colleague, Mr. Weiland.
Thank you, Dr. Bergstrom. So we kind of looked at this two different ways, but the way that's on this slide is the way that I believe will impact people from an average perspective in our different municipalities. We have 10 different municipalities in our school district, and all have kind of different financial situations happening. So what we tried to do is look at those municipalities and anticipate the impact that this referendum would have on them from a 3-year basis, each year there. So $98 per 100,000 the first year, which would actually be this year. So that would be on the levy in December when people get their tax bills, 95 the following year, and 66 the third year in this. Based on a lot of assumptions, small prints on the bottom of the thing there, but realistic assumptions, I think. The other thing that I wanted to mention is if you look just at the mill rate, which a lot of our neighbors are doing, you will see that our mill rate, I put it in the agenda item, it's not on this slide, but our mill rate probably will stay fairly consistent to what it was last year, this year. And then it will raise slightly, but it won't, by the third year, it'll still be less than what it was last year. So the mill rate, if you just look at that, won't be rising that much. This is because of increased assessed values, but the impact of people, we felt that it was important to share what the impact would be to people when they actually pay their tax bills.
Thank you. So what are the next steps? Well, of course, the board is making a decision tonight. They're taking action tonight. We will continue with community engagements no matter the decision this evening. And we encourage people to send their questions to questions@oregonsd.org, and we will be responding. We also have a website, as you can see on the screen, that will give people additional information, and we will continue to update that website as new information becomes available.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bergstrom and Andy. First, I will go around and see if we've been talking about this a lot. So I will go around and see if anyone has any additional questions or things that they'd like to ask Dr. Bergstrom or Andy. Go ahead, Heather.
I have one. Can you go back to the ESSER slide, please?
Surely.
Andy, I know you've talked at length about this, but we're just going to talk a little more just because I want to make sure that it's really clear. I know that each district got a different amount of ESSER funds, and just to confirm that this $3 million is 1, 2, 3, all 3 ESSERs?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, and then we've obviously spent a majority of that because there were costs
either this through this year we will have.
Oh, through this coming school
Yep.
year. So $3 million sounds like a lot, but it went to real things, and it's not something that we just have that we can, parlay into something else.
Correct. And even though it does sound like a lot, I
Right.
will absolutely agree with you. I just got asked today to represent school districts that didn't get a lot of ESSER money per pupil to sit on a panel for our fall conference, because actually there are districts that received close to 10 times more money than we did on a per pupils basis.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mary, do you have any clarifying questions?
I do, Krista. So I know, and we've talked about this quite a bit, that we have dropped more than any other state. We dropped from 11th in 2002 to 25th in 2020. And this is per pupil spending on a statewide basis, just for perspective. Do we have any sense of where the 0% increases over 2 years will place us, or how many other states had a 0% increase?
I do not have that information. I haven't heard of many, but I'm not plugged into every state in the United States. So yeah, I think we will be dropping several more spaces in the next couple years.
Okay, all right. And then just obviously, I know that we are mindful that a referendum is not without impact to taxpayers. I know we have talked through a variety of different approaches and different referendum amounts. The dollar amount that the administrative team is now recommending, the 11.4. So where does that place us from a competitive perspective? Does that, do we feel comfortable that dollar amount will enable us to continue competing, given the teacher shortage?
Well, we don't know exactly what will happen with all of the other school districts who are going to referendum and how they may add that money to their salary schedule. But based off of what we know right now, we believe that it will keep us definitely in the top half and very competitive with our neighboring districts, especially as we strive to also have a culture that makes people want to be here. That's another important piece. Money's very important, but I would say the type of culture we create together is another very important factor.
Thank you, Dr. Bergstrom. My last question is, again, with regard to the referendum amount of 11.4. I know that right now we are, our salaries for our educators are 5.93% behind CPI. And can you confirm for me that the 11.4 does include making that up into their base pay so that they will no longer be as behind CPI as we currently are?
It does include that, but I will also say that if the board decides to go to a referendum and if it passes, then there's also some bargaining with our Oregon Teachers Association as far as how that money gets added to the schedule.
Thank you. Those are my clarifying questions.
Thank you, Dr. Lakuta. Anyone else have clarifying questions? Go ahead, Tim.
Andy, we've talked about this before. There's a bit of uncertainty as to what the CPI will be for this year. We have a range up there now.
For this year, it's nailed down, but for this year which is
going
used
forward
for the future. Right?
Yes, exactly, and certainly for the following year. Yep. With that in mind, we are approving a certainty here, but we also have the ability to levy what we need if indeed the state comes back to the table and funds education the way it's intended to be funded. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This year, the levy will probably be the $5.42 million, simply because the referendum date and when the levy has to be certified is right there.
Sure.
But absolutely, every year this board will have that decision to make as far as the future levies.
Very good. That's the only question I have at the moment.
Anna or Leslie, any questions? One question I want to ask, and I think it's kind of a follow-up to what we heard tonight. I think there is some, we are dealing with this day in and day out. You've dealt with this for 30 years. I think there's maybe a misunderstanding in terms of the volume and the yearly operating revenue that we need to operate. And so Can you kind of talk a little bit about why we are here with a referendum? Because there aren't any really other options, given the amount of money, what we need recurring year after year, and the position that we're in, that we are basically a sole source revenue operation being the state. I think those are really important things about why we may come up with revenue ideas, but there's nothing that is the stature of what we need to operate based on what the state has done.
Yeah, this slide does a pretty good job of, at least in my opinion, of trying to represent that. The majority of our funding, it's not that years ago, the board used to be able to decide how much the levy could be. But with revenue limits, that levy is really restricted. And what people don't understand is if there is more, if they pay more in property taxes, they don't understand that actually we lose state aid, so that kind of balances out the additional property taxes that they pay. So unless you go to referendum and have the authority to spend the additional money or receive the additional money. So we are talking millions of dollars here, unfortunately, and anything like, sometimes people will talk about grants. And maybe we should go out and try to find some grant writing type of thing. And grants are great, but typically, more likely than not, grants are kind of seed money to start another program or another expenditure, which then kind of makes the issue in this situation worse. So that's not really the solution. Fundraising and those types of things are great. We appreciate people doing that. But again, we're talking about an annual commitment that needs to continue to be able to fund things such as salaries, which means they can't go away if we're going to have a good culture and be able to have certainty for our employees.
And so just to follow up to that, I mean, so we are not the only district in this situation, and I think Dr. Bergstrom even showed me that Mount Horeb has made the decision to go to referendum. So, you know, you've said this before, and I think it's important. How many school districts, public school districts, do you think in the state of Wisconsin are going to be going to referendum in the next 2 years?
I believe there are 420 of them, and I think there will be 420 referendums eventually. I think there's, I don't know if this is only operating. I'm sure there's actually some capital in there, but I think I read that there's like 180 already going in November. Some of those will be capital, but I think this year, for probably the first time, the majority of them will be operating.
And was that the intention of the legislature?
Oh boy, I don't know that I want to speak to the intention of the legislature.
I mean, in terms of really shifting
like
that responsibility to the local taxpayer.
It feels like that. I don't know why else they would have done what they have done, other than to make us go to referendum more often.
Okay. All right. Any other clarifying questions from the board? Okay. Hearing none. So the process will be, if a board member would like to, looking at the first action item, which is the resolution authorizing the school district budget to exceed revenue limits for recurring purposes, you will see that motion language on the back of the purple, the recommendation. So if so moved, a board member can put that resolution on the table in a motion. And then we can have a second and discussion. Go ahead, Tim, I'm sorry.
I would like to move that we pass the resolution authorizing the school district budget to exceed the revenue limit for recurring purposes, and resolution providing for a referendum election on the question of the approval of a resolution authorizing the school district budget to exceed revenue limits for the recurring purposes.
Okay, and then would you like to also read the amounts as part of your motion, Tim?
Sure.
Here,
Thank you.
just for the record. Thank you.
Those amounts include a total of $11.4 million over the next 3 years. That's $5,420,000 for 22-23, $3 million for 23-24, and $2,980,000 for 2024 and 2025.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, Dr. Lakuta with the second. I will now open it up for discussion for board members to have any comments or questions. Who would like to start? Mary, would you like to go?
I certainly can.
Okay.
This is something that we've been talking about really since the beginning of this year, when it became clear that that the legislature was not going to give us any increase in per pupil aid, and realizing that Oregon School District is facing a challenge that's not unique to our district. But it started before January. Nationwide, teaching has been attracting fewer and fewer degree candidates. I know we have heard the number before, that between 2010 and 2020, the number of individuals completing teacher programs has decreased by 30%. And while this crisis of a teacher shortage has been building for years, the pandemic has certainly accelerated the nationwide teacher shortage through early retirement and more rapid burnout. And there nationwide are tens of thousands of vacant teacher positions. And so while we do have the benefit of being a destination district because we have a culture of quality that has been cultivated for years, and that culture of quality supports our teachers and our administrators. And so that has served us well to decrease the impact of this teacher shortage. We have actually begun to experience issues in our district. And so I had asked Ms. Jonan to put together some numbers. And what we can see is if we look at previous years prior to the pandemic, when we look at the number of resignations across the years, typically within our control resignations run between 0 and 4 per year. This year it was 11, and that's individuals who were leaving for comparable positions in neighboring districts. And so we are unfortunately beginning to see, an impact of our inability to meet the market for salaries. And so the other thing is that realizing that Wisconsin public schools are losing ground relative to other states, I was interested to see how other school districts nationwide are handling the teacher shortage. And what I found was in districts with the financial means to do so, they are increasing salaries, they're giving bonuses, they are using teacher residency programs, they're covering the cost of credentialing, all those things, but those things do require money. Without the ability to offer competitive salaries or bonuses, what's being utilized in other districts, they're cutting course offerings, they're cutting co-curricular activities, they're increasing class sizes, they're actually hosting virtual teachers in the classroom, especially for math. So they will simply have a virtual teacher come in to teach their entire classes. Several districts in Texas are actually shifting to a 4-day school week, and in the hopes that will draw potential teachers in. They're also decreasing teacher requirements. So Florida is allowing military veterans to teach regardless of whether they have any relevant teaching education or experience. So there are all types of solutions being, approaches, I don't want to call them solutions, being utilized across the country. But when we look at each of those options, every one of them negatively impacts our learners. We know that the single biggest factor in the success of our students is the teacher in the classroom. And so it's very unfortunate that the state has collected taxpayer money that should have been funneled into the public schools, but they've instead chosen to create this unused surplus of funds totaling, $4.5 billion, and have made it clear that they are not going to use it to fund our schools. And recognizing, this is a comment that we heard during the community input group, that having a referendum does amount to double taxation, but we've talked about it for months, and there is no alternative given the position the legislature has put us in. So one last item that I wanted to share is that research that was done by the National Bureau of Economic Research shows that for every dollar that's invested in public schools, property values actually increase by $20. So a referendum has the potential to directly benefit the majority of the community through increased property values and maintenance of course, this is our ultimate goal of excellent educational opportunities. I'm glad that the administration has taken the community feedback into account and support the resolution as presented by going with the middle dollar amount that was presented in the last board meeting. I feel like that is the best approach, given that also takes into account people living on fixed income. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate it. Who would like to go next? Go ahead, Anna.
So I guess the first couple statements that I want to make are related to why I support going forward with an operational referendum. And I guess the number one reason is that I want to have the best possible education for every student in our district. And that begins with those teachers. We have excellent educators. We want to keep those excellent educators who believe in the values of our district, who are dedicated to our kids and our community, and who create amazing and effective learning opportunities within their classrooms and in all of our schools. Secondly, it's a competitive market, and there is a real crisis with having enough people entering the field and educators leaving the field. And so I feel that if we want to ensure that we're hiring the best people, we need to, from a limited pool, we've got to have the ability to compensate them at a high level. If we want the best, we need to be prepared to pay for the best. Third, we have been making fiscally responsible decisions, and I think one of the most difficult ones we made, in my opinion, was the change to health insurance. And at that time, I made the comment that we were making the action by our board was not aligned with our words of how much we value our educators. But tonight, if we pass an operational referendum, we are making an action that is aligned with our words. It's aligned with our values as a board, and it's aligned with our community values. So I feel that if we want to be a leader in education, if we want the best possible education for our children, if we want to maintain a strong academic experience that meets the needs of the whole child, we as a community need to make the investment in our teachers and staff at this point in time when the state of Wisconsin is not. I personally do not want to accept the trade-offs that would come without a referendum or see a reduction in the quality of education that's provided to our children. So I support the referendum. The next question to me is, where do I land with what's the right amount? Because we've seen three options. And I will say that off the bat, the two that I'm most interested in are options 2 and 3. And the reason for that is because we have fallen behind in several categories with how competitive we are with our salaries. We've heard that we are low on our paraprofessionals. We're low with our salaries for special education paraprofessionals, beginning educators, our principals, our administrators, and our most experienced educators. So without a market adjustment that's included in options 2 and 3, our district is still not going to be able to compete with many of our neighboring districts. We were once a leader in compensation, and we need to get back to being back in that realm of being a leader. So I strongly support options 2 and 3. Now, when I look at how much we value our teachers and our staff, and the incredible work they do, I want nothing more than to support option 3, because our teachers deserve that. They deserve the best. However, I recognize that everyone in our community is being impacted by inflation, being impacted by rising costs. We're all feeling the impacts of the increased costs of groceries and fuel, and honestly, anything that we consume, we're seeing that. We're all experiencing it. From that perspective, I do support option 2 as recommended by the administration, because I do feel it strikes a balance of maintaining our ability to be competitive, offer a high quality education, while being fiscally responsible with what we are asking from our community members and our taxpayers. The last thing I guess I want to comment on is that, and I'm glad Leslie brought it up, there's more to job satisfaction than money. And I know that when we as a board met in July, we directed the administration to look at 2 initiatives. The first was education compensation, including revenue needs, financial options, and sources. The second was the educator environment enhancements, including job satisfaction, innovation, and wellness. And this referendum will address that first item, but I am in full support of the work that is planned this year to address that second initiative regarding job satisfaction, innovation, and wellness. And I look forward to that very important work. We need to maintain that positive culture. We need our educators to feel satisfied in the work that they do, valued and appreciated. And we need to make sure that we're maintaining a desirable work environment that supports, attracts, and retains our teachers. So with that, I will be in full support of the resolution and the option 2.
All right, thank you, Anna. Go ahead, Heather.
Much of what I was going to say was covered by Mary and Anna, so I'm just going to add a couple brief comments here. Andy, you live and breathe this and have spent countless hours, days, weeks. As I continue to learn the complexities, I'm just so grateful that you are at the helm of this, along with Dr. Bergstrom and everybody else involved that can take this information and make it understandable. I think I've said the words dire situation before in this meeting, and it continues to be dire, and so it's unfortunate that we are at this point to do this, but I do fully support the resolution. I wanted to just say that the community sessions I thought were really helpful in hearing from the community. I thought that was a great piece of this process as we've continued to talk about this. The work that the board has done, like we've said, with some of the things that we've done to prepare ourselves for this. And really the most important thing to me is that this is something that is cohesive for the community to get behind. If you have kids in school, obviously it's super important to you, but even if you don't, this is something that everybody can agree on, is that we want what's best for our kids, and that research shows that the way that we do that is to have the best teachers there and to retain the best teachers. So I just wanted to add those few brief comments, and I support the resolution. Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Leslie.
So I don't know that I can compare to what the last 3 very intelligent ladies have said. But I do want to just give some background as I was thinking about, like, we've been talking about this for a couple of months now, and maybe even longer. But I was kind of thinking about, like, how I've come to be in this district and how that has affected us and what we've done. And so I want to give you a little bit of background, because our family has been here about 10 years. And we actually open enrolled into this district for all of the reasons that we talk about being a destination district. After we open enrolled and we found that my then freshman son was doing well, much better than he had been in his previous districts. He was doing well, he was learning and fitting in with his peers, and the teachers had been amazing for him. We decided we would move here, and as we purchased our home in Fitchburg, where we're still at, we had several family members who had graduated from OHS in the years prior come and tell us about what an amazing education they had from from this wonderful school and through this district, because some of them came all the way from 4K all the way up through graduating. Not to mention some of them actually went on to be teachers. Unfortunately, not here. They're in other states. However, and I feel saddened that many of our districts, not just this district, but the districts in Wisconsin are all suffering through this problem that we're all talking about right now. Our financial situation, that we have a choice, basically. We can make, we can support our teachers, we can support the education and the quality that we have decided that is important to us, because we've asked our community and we've looked inside and we've done the deep dives to find out, what is super important to us. And we have decided that yes, these are our values, and we indeed do want to support our educators. Or we can choose not to. And if we choose not to, and in my opinion, this is what that looks like. To me, it looks like our class sizes grow. Likely, the quality of instruction will drop, and the variety of classes we're able to offer may get cut. And unfortunately for us, in a community that values things like tech and ag and music and sports, unfortunately, those are usually, and I'm not saying that we're making those decisions, but I'm saying that those are usually the first things to go. And that would make not just me sad, but I'm sure a whole lot of people sad. So I personally don't want to see that. I know from looking at the info from the info sessions that we did at the beginning of August, that many in our community do not want to see that as well. And for those reasons, I do support the referendum. I don't think looking at raising taxes is very much fun. I don't think that's anything anybody wants to do. But if it comes down to our kids getting a quality education and the future of our community, because that's what these kids are. They are the future of our community, and that's what we're going to be looking at in 10, 15, 20 years from now. It's these kids. And we have to decide, are we going to put into that or not? And I fully support putting into that. And I agree with Anna as far as the amounts goes. Everything inside me really wants to go for that third option, but I also know, being fiscally responsible, I think that second option is a better choice for our community right now, because we are all hurting. If this was a different day and time, maybe that third option would be the right way to go, because I do feel like that our teachers deserve that. I do feel like our students deserve that. But I support the second option as well.
All right, thank you, Leslie. Tim, looks like you're up.
Yes, I agree with what everyone has said so far, and I have little to add to that. Many have spoken specifically to the referendum, and I'd like to speak just for a moment to the community. For people who know me, I do not spend money easily. Just ask my wife and our 4 kids. I'm a little tight with money, and that can be very frustrating. The other thing about me and money is that when I'm spending others' money, I spend it even more carefully. And so that being said, it is time to spend this money. It is time to spend this money. Oftentimes I make these decisions for myself based not on what will the money or what will the decision create, but what will the lack of the decision create, the opportunity cost for those who think more financially or more economically. It's important to remember that this is not at this moment about getting ahead. We are not spending more money than we need to at this moment to get ahead. Mr. Donahue said, all we want is to keep the school district the way we want it to be. That's it. We're in this moment of time where we have to simply try to maintain the position we have earned over many, many years. We know that that we are a destination district without question, and it's because of the results we achieve. our 4 kids. That's the best thing I can relate to. Got great educations here. Great. And it's because we are at a place where over many years we have curated a staff of very, very good educators. And we cannot afford to lose that place. In other words, those educators. We have to continue that investment at a level where they feel we are making that investment. Secondly, along the lines of what could happen if we don't move forward with this resolution. You saw a glimpse of our neighbors who are moving ahead with a resolution like this. Some, and very possibly all of those resolutions, are going to pass. And we, if we don't move forward with this, will be at an enormous, enormous loss. We will be at a huge disadvantage if we don't just maintain what we have here. Third, this is about this community's opportunity to take the funding of education a little bit more into our own hands. We keep seeing the numbers. 90% of our destiny is decided by somebody who doesn't even know us. This is our opportunity to take a little bit more of that ownership back and say, this is how much education is worth to us. So I want to go back to the beginning. I don't spend money easily. I really don't. With regards to the level that we're looking to fund, I look at that lower level and I think to myself, the first thing I imagine to myself is sipping from a canteen. If any of you have ever been lost and had a bottle of water, and I'm a scouting person, so a canteen of water, the worst thing that you can do is just sip a little, sip a little, sip a little. Lots and lots of people who have gotten lost in the woods have been found with half-full canteens because they sipped a little, but never quenched their thirst. And so they slipped away a little bit at a time. We can't afford to do that at all. The top level, this isn't the time. This isn't the time to dream. There will be a time to dream. Don't get me wrong. There will be. And we have done it over and over and over again in a very careful way. But this isn't the time. This is the time to maintain the position we've earned. And so the middle level is the level for me. It is. I don't spend money easily. But when I do, I spend it carefully, and that is being spent carefully. So with that in mind, I, just as everyone so far has said, wholeheartedly support this referendum at the level that's been presented and recommended.
Tim, that was amazing. I'm going to let you have the last word. I cannot make it any better than that. I really appreciate your leadership and your comments on that. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to turn to Gina for parliamentary procedure here for a second in terms of walking us through. We do have a motion on the table, but I want to make sure we're doing this to the T. So I'm going to turn it over to you to let us know how we need to walk through this.
Right, so I appreciate that. In terms of, you have 2 different resolutions that you would need to pass tonight. So in terms of it being the cleanest, my point of order would be in terms of Mr. LeBrun's first motion that and you'll see this in your purple packet. So there is one resolution to exceed the revenue limit, and that has the numbers in them. Mm-hmm. And then there is a separate resolution going to a referendum election. Correct. So as I heard Mr. LeBrun's motion, but I want to make certain everyone knows what they're voting on and that I heard it correctly. So I'd ask Mr. LeBrun, was the intent of the motion to look at the resolution to exceed the revenue limits?
Yes.
And I'll look to Ms. Heights looking at the motion itself. Are you able to read that back?
It's just the resolution that it's written. Yes.
Mr. LeBrun's motion.
Sure. So I have Mr. LeBrun's motion to approve the resolution for the Oregon School District, for the School Board of the Oregon School District, Dane, Greene, and Rock Counties, Wisconsin, that the revenues included in the school district budget be authorized to exceed the revenue limit specified in section 121.91 Wisconsin statutes by $5,420,000 for the 22-23 school year, by an additional $3 million for a total of $8.42 million for the 2023-24 school year, and by an additional $2,980,000 for a total of $11,400,000 for the 24-25 school year and thereafter, for reoccurring purposes consisting of expenses to pay compensation and to sustain district instruction and operations.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to make sure that all board members understand that's the first motion you'll be voting on is the resolution to exceed the revenue limits as Ms. Heights read back. And then if that is approved, then we would need a motion for the second resolution.
All right, is there any further discussion on that original motion? Okay, Mary, any additional discussion?
Not for me.
All right, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. LeBrun,
Yes.
Dr. Lakuda,
Yes.
Ms. Bijak,
Yes.
Ms. Garrison,
Yes.
Ms. Wright,
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Okay, I will now entertain a motion for the resolution providing for a referendum election on the question of the approval of a resolution authorizing the school district to exceed revenue limit for recurring purposes. So that is the second motion before us. All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that motion? All right, I will turn it over to Ms. Jonan, our parliamentarian, to make sure that we have done what we needed to do in terms of the technicality of that resolution.
Yes, thank you. You have.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Garrison?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuda? Dr. Lakuda, can you please repeat that?
Yes.
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz? Nope. Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. I want to thank all the board members for spending a lot of time on this over the last year, over the last couple months. And then I also want to say a special thank you to Ms. Jonan, Mr. Weiland, and Dr. Bergstrom. This is a lot of heavy lifting. And I also want to thank Andy because, as Heather said, and I'm really glad you said that, Andy has been at this a long time. And we talk about fiscal responsibility. Andy works really hard at this, and now he is an expert in the state. People are coming to him, asking him for potential options or things that they do. And so, Andy, I really appreciate, and I want to make sure we say that publicly, that we thank you for all your work on this. All right, moving to action item 3, approval of the 2022 annual meeting agenda. You have that information before you. Welcome back to the table, Troy. Troy, would you like to make a motion about the annual meeting agenda since you've been away for a while? We'll get a motion on the table and then we can have any discussion.
Move to approve the annual meeting agenda as printed.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I'll actually turn it over to Dr. Bergstrom if you'd like to explain what the annual meeting is so people can have a little bit of background, or if Andy wants to do that, or Gina. Sorry, put you on the spot.
Quite all right, but I know that this is one of Andy's favorite nights of the year, so I'm going to let him talk about it.
How much time do I get? No, that's a running joke. Basically, the annual meeting is a little bit of a vestige from a different time, but it still has some relevance in the current day. As I referred to earlier this evening, before revenue limits came into play, the annual meeting was actually how boards of education actually set the tax levy. So there were not a limit. They could actually determine what they needed and basically approve what they needed. But around in 1992-93, the revenue limits came into play, and then the number of students and the numbers that the state provided became kind of the defining limitation as to what school districts could raise. So that was the main purpose, but there are other powers that Gina could probably better define than I of the annual meeting. Such things as purchasing and selling property, real property, is a power of the annual meeting, as well as it's kind of an opportunity for the community to participate in and government, because everybody at the annual meeting shares the same level of vote, if you would. So it's an opportunity for the constituents to come in and have the same authority defined in the annual meeting as everybody that sits at the table here in the Board of Education. So that's where it kind of came from. It doesn't quite have that level of importance as before as far as setting the levy, but it's still an important time as far as the governance of the school district. Gina, would you add anything else?
That was well said. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Pankratz? Yes. Ms. Bijak? Yes. Ms. Garrison? Yes. Dr. Lakuta? Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. LeBrun?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ms. Wright? Yes. Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you, everyone. That was a lot of important action items tonight. Moving on to D, discussion items, committee reports. I will go to Heather for policy.
Our next meeting is September 26th.
Okay, great, thank you. Next is vision steering. Troy.
And our next meeting is September 12th.
Okay. Make note of that. Okay, moving on to E, information items, visioning and strategic planning, teaching and learning update, and superintendent's report. So I will turn it over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you, and I'll take us home for the evening. So we are really making some big progress in moving through our visioning and strategic planning framework. We have our portrait of a graduate, which is just a few slides away, as we also have our 3 to 5 year strategic priorities. And of course, you adopted a decision-making framework this year, and our schools have been working all summer with leadership teams on annual goals and action plans. And we'll be reporting some of that to you in October. So as you see, you approved a set of strategic priorities that are driving a lot of the work that we are doing. And number 4 is certainly a focus for this evening, and that is enhancing the future financial health of the school district. We know we've given considerable input to multiple stakeholder groups as far as portrait of a graduate, and now I think we have a product that is the school district vision, and I think we can all feel very proud of it. And we will be talking about portrait of a graduate tomorrow when we have all 600 plus staff members in the competition gym, when we spend just a little bit of time together connecting with what's important. And also, it'll be the first time in a long time that we've been able to feel all together, a part of something even bigger than our school unit. Because it's been 3 years since we've been able to get together as a large, complete group. And so that'll be a really exciting feeling when all of us are there tomorrow. And we have about 10 school district students who are coming to greet their teachers, and you have to give the kids a hand when they're willing to get up in front of 600 people and say welcome back and what they're looking forward to. That they are really impressing me. We have one person as young as 7 years old who's getting up in front of the microphone tomorrow, so that will be a treat. And for our teaching and learning update, a lot of great things have been happening. All last week we have our full release mentor, Cindy Hedstrom and John Tanner and Darcy Krieger. We're working with our staff on new educator orientation. We had about 26, 27 new people. I thought the number was even higher, but it's because I was thinking of paraprofessionals in my head when I said we were over 40. Jumpstart Orientations took place last week, and that was another great way to get students ready for what's ahead. The middle school had 270 out of 320 students attend Jumpstart. So I thought that was an amazing turnout and really helps our students who are transitioning to a new school understand a little more about how it feels to be there and what the expectations are before they even show up on the first day. So it's a really valuable experience. Of course, as I mentioned, tomorrow is our all-staff assembly. And then also tomorrow is when our Ready, Set, Go conferences begin for 4K through grade 8. So family members are coming in with their young people and meeting with teachers and talking about what the year will look like, and really just beginning to form the connection that will be so important to student success over the course of the school year.
Before you go on to that, I mean, let's just stop for a second. 270 kids out of 325 came to Jumpstart at OMS. That's amazing.
It is.
That's super exciting.
Thank you. Okay, now for some more fun, because you know that the superintendent reports, thanks to our amazing communication director, who's done a lot of heavy lifting related to spreading the information about our current financial situation. She also does the heavy lifting in these reports because she makes them look great. So first we have our final summer class. You see our students doing their log rolling. And, you know, who in the world ever thought log rolling would be one of the most popular summer school classes? But that's what you get when you try different things and you let kids gravitate toward what interests them. And you can see from these pictures that kids are having a great time. Our new educators, when they spend the 4 days with us like they spent last week, they get together in groups and not even associated with their school, but just groups together as new educators. And they are sent out on a scavenger hunt. Our community education department organizes it. And they're all around town learning about the Oregon School District, features of our district, and also really creating some great memories as new team members. As a matter of fact, when John Tanner and I interview teachers after their second year with us, very often they will talk about the scavenger hunt as their favorite memory from new educator orientation. And then, you know, it is summertime still, and everyone's holding on to it for dear life, including the wonderful boosters at the golf outing that took place last week on Monday at the Bergamot Golf Course. Tons and tons of participation, and our athletic director, Brittany Spencer Grant, and I were able to personally thank all of the people who were a part of the outing, because it is a huge fundraiser and goes to support our students in doing some of the things that they love doing best, such as fall athletics are underway. I can't believe how many games or matches or events have taken place, and school hasn't even started. So there is an awful lot of fun things happening, and kids are getting an opportunity to do the things that really give them the kind of memories that they'll talk about at their reunions 30 or 40 years from now. And once again, a little bit of info about Jumpstart. You can see all the kids at RCI having fun. You see the teachers who are there with our students, the students at the high school who are the Pride Crew leaders, who take our freshmen around the building and serve as really terrific role models for them. And then I've also ran into a person or two, particularly parents of fifth graders, who talk about how much time and attention their child is giving to learning to have a lock on their locker. And that may seem small to us as an adult, but if you could transport back in time, you'd have an opportunity to remember just what a big deal that is. And then just a little bit of information. We know everybody's thinking about morning routines and who's there after school, and bus routes will be coming soon. You'll get a notification that it's time to log on and take a look. And the big Orange Chair Summer Challenge, that has really taken off. It's hard to go by the high school and not see somebody getting their picture taken in the chair. So here you see youth football and a couple of our fabulous teachers. And there you see a little soccer player, and that will be a very fun picture upon graduation, as well as all of our new educators. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to F, closing, future agenda. Our next meeting will be September 12th. And then I will move on to checkout. I will go around the horn and see if anyone has anything for checkout. We'll start with Heather. Troy. Dr. Lakuta?
Thank you. I'm good for the evening.
Okay. Leslie? Anna? Tim? All right. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. LeBrun?
Yes.
Ms. Wright? Ms. Bijak? Yes. Ms. Garrison? Yes. Dr. Lakuta? Mr. Pankratz? Yes. Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned at 7:44. Thank you, everyone.